Good morning and welcome to the officials of the Auditor General's Department. My name is Devendranath Tanku and I'm the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. The Public Accounts Committee has a mandate to consider and report to the House on A, appropriation accounts of monies expended out of sums granted by Parliament to meet the public expenditure of Trinidad and Tobago. B, such other accounts as may be referred to the committee by the House of Representatives or as are authorized or required to be considered by the committee under any other enactment. And C, the report of the Auditor General on any such accounts. The purpose of today's meeting is for the Public Accounts Committee to have a general discussion with the Auditor General of the audit process on the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year ended 30th of September 2022, and to determine the challenges being faced and possible solutions to these challenges. Based on the issues identified, the Auditor General's Department was invited. Please note that this meeting is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11, on Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners are welcome to send their comments related to today's inquiry via email, parl101@ttparliament.org, facebook.com/ttparliament, Twitter @ttparliament. I now ask members of the Public Accounts Committee to introduce themselves to you today, starting with my colleagues on my right.
John, Vice Chairman of the committee.
Adrian Leons, member.
Good morning, Ayana Webster-Roy, member.
Good morning all. Shiva Sananan, Assistant Auditor General.
Good morning all. Susan Rambasad, Audit Executive 2.
Good morning. Farida Chong Singh, Audit Executive 2.
Dian Raghunath, Acting Audit Executive 2.
Good morning. Neela Sukra, Audit Supervisor.
Welcome, members. May I now invite the Auditor General to make a brief opening statement.
Okay.
Or the representative, sorry, sir, the Assistant Auditor General.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good day, Mr. Chairman and members of the PAC Committee. We, the delegation from the Auditor General's Department, are here to provide support to the Public Accounts Committee in conducting its business in the examination of the contents of the 2022 report. This report was written against a backdrop of an open up of the international and local economy and the easing of social restrictions in the rapid realization of a post-COVID-19 environment. The focus of the overall debt levels of the nation was a major part of this year's audit. The social programs for those affected by the economic fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic was also examined amongst other areas mentioned in the report. The examination was conducted in an environment where COVID-19 protocols were still being observed in some premises of the clients. Thank you.
Thank you. The methods we usually use will be adopted today. I will normally initiate the questions, initiate the discussions, and then my colleagues will enter the discussions as questions arise. So let me begin by again welcoming members of the Auditor General's Department. I have had the opportunity to peruse reports of the Auditor General on the accounts of Trinidad and Tobago for many years. And I think what we would have found is that there seems to be a consistency in terms of some of the concerns that were raised in this last report and will probably continue to be raised. But there seems to have been a series of stagnated issues which have remained the same for multiplicity of years. On the basis of that, I want to ask then Mr. Sananan, the Assistant Auditor General, if there are any challenges specifically being faced by the Auditor General's department with regards to staffing, resourcing generally, housing, those kind of things, which would impact positively or negatively on the conduct of your business as the Auditor General's department.
Chair, presently we have a 35% vacancy level at our department. We are currently liaising with the Chief Personnel Officer at the DPA to get these vacancies filled. We have gotten, over the last 2 years, some of our vacancies filled in the professional level and at the lower levels. So we are currently working on it. But this is a problem we have been facing for quite a long time. The accommodation is quite okay with us at the waterfront complex, but the vacancies situation is really critical that we need to address, and it is being addressed. And we have gotten support from the Ministry of Finance to fill the vacancies at the professional and technical levels over the last 2 years.
Would it be that the vacancies that exist now are at a lower level, at the administrative level, or is it that there is a mix?
At the lower levels of the auditing streams, the assistant one's level, at the technical level. The professional level is okay now. We have gotten at least 9 of the vacancies filled. But at the lower levels, the audit exam assistant 1, at the entry level, of the technical class, those vacancies are there.
And those vacancies, the fact that we have had those vacancies would have impacted upon the progressing of audits? Because
Yes,
those would actually have been the foot soldiers who would have been responsible for conducting the audits.
Right, the foot soldiers. We have much fewer foot soldiers as in previous years.
How severely have you been affected as a result of that in terms of conducting your business?
We would have been at a 30% deficit of staff. So at least 30% of the work that we could have done, we could not have done during the last year. In terms of the scope of the work, the areas we wanted to look at, it was severely reduced.
You said that you have a 35% vacancy right now, which is a constraint. Can you put that in terms of an actual number of human bodies?
That could be around 80 auditors. Approximately, I could get back to you on the correct figure.
Sure, but it's 80 is a substantial number. So even if it's 50 to 60 to 70, that is still a substantial number given the nature of the requirements.
Yes, because we run a very tight workshop by us. We have to get everything planned in advance, maybe a year in advance, week by week, day by day, when we're doing audits. So everybody is essential to get a job done. We actually have timesheets by the hours that we spend on an audit. So when we have one person missing, 2 persons missing for whatever reason, it really affects the planning, what we can do.
Is it then that, now you indicated that you have been working with closely with the Ministry of Finance to fill vacancies. Has this 35% odd vacancy existed for an extended period of time, or is it relatively new?
Relatively new, because we had a lot of, let me say a lot, at least 25 to 30 appointments at the lower level over the last 2 years. At the lowest level, with the foot soldiers. At the professional level, we had about 9 vacancies being filled. So it's relatively, like in the last maybe 1 or 2 years, with the amount of retirements we've been having from the office as well, people leaving just natural attrition, the vacancies keep arising.
And have you been directly engaging Ministry of Finance to get a timeline as to when some of these vacancies can be addressed so that you can have a full complement of staff?
Yes, we have been liaising with the Ministry of Finance and the DPA to have interviews for the lower level vacancies to be filled, because they have to be write an exam and be interviewed. And it takes a while to advertise and let everything be done, with accountability across the board.
Do you have a timeline as to when you think you hope? Well, hope is general, but do you have a timeline when you think that this 35% vacancy can be narrowed down?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Because if I'm to guess, 35% vacancy in staff, and I'm harping on that for a reason. A 35% vacancy at entry-level staff or at lower-level staff means that your work efficiency at the higher level is cut down as well, because you have basically a 35% shortfall in your incoming work.
Right. But at the higher levels, we ask people to maybe do some of the lower level work, just to get the work done properly. Ask people if we could help out at the lower levels. Whatever we can do to get the job done, to deliver this report on time, the staff of the Auditor General Department will do whatever they have to get it done properly. With the proper quality assurance procedures in place and levels of review, we make the best we could with what we have.
Thank you, Assistant Auditor General. I note that we have quite a few numbers, quite a few entities which have outstanding Auditor General's reports. Is it that that is as a result of this constraint that you have, the employee constraint, or is it that we have a failure of the agencies themselves, the state entities themselves, to provide information, because they would have, assume, would have provided the reports for you to review?
Okay. I believe you're talking about the statutory boards and similar bodies.
Yes.
Right, as opposed to the appropriation account. The statutory boards and similar bodies, many of these are in arrears, partially because of the lack of staffing, and possibly some of them did not submit financial statements on time. I believe Madam AG would have sent a report in stating how many entities did not send in reports over the years. But a lot of this work is predicated upon having enough staff, and because we don't have enough staff to do the job with integrity, that will stand up against any criticism, we have to use what we have, and it only allows us that latitude of operations with the staff we have.
I want to ask a different question. My last question before I turn over to my colleagues. Is it also true that, so you review the submissions, financial submissions, by a wide range of bodies, but does the Auditor General itself, the Auditor General's department itself, engage in doing its own auditing of specific entities?
Okay, like the statutory boards. Okay, this, those of us present here, we would have audited the ministries and departments of the public service. There's a statutory section that deals with all the statutory boards, that they have a statute to create them.
Yes.
And these are audited individually by auditors. I believe all of us, 4 of us here would have been working in that section over the years, where we would have audited these statutory boards, their financial statements, balance sheet, profit and loss, equity statements, cash flow statements from beginning to end, cradle to grave, womb to tomb of everything, and come up with and produce a report that could stand the integrity of the examination of any third party. So we do the work ourselves.
Right. So is it a concept then, a possibility, or is it useful to have external auditing being done, to be brought to the Auditor General's department for review? I'm trying to find out if there's a hybrid that we could work out. You can work out. I'm sure you have considered possibilities of all sorts in order to increase your turnover, not staff, but in terms of your report turnover. But have you considered any other option, any hybrid, in the absence of the staffing that you require? Okay,
Depending on the laws or the statute that created the statutory body, there's a clause that says audited by the Auditor General or auditor appointed by the Auditor General or with the approval of the Auditor General.
Yes.
We have explored these avenues, and in areas that we can outsource auditing, we have done it. But again, with strict controls over the quality of work that is being done by the private auditors. So if we give a contract and private auditor to do the work, we will give them certain reference points and milestones we want to look at. The planning, the execution, the review, the post-review, the reporting, the materiality calculations that we would look at individually in detail after the audit is done and say, okay, we can pay you and rely on your work.
I want to commend the Auditor General's department very highly, especially since I'm now being advised of the staff constraints. But I want to commend you very highly for the fact that you have been able to exercise quite a bit of work. You've been able to conduct quite a bit of work on behalf of the population of Trinidad and Tobago, despite your constraints. Well done, gentlemen and ladies. I want to turn over now to my colleagues if you have any other questions. Anybody else?
Yes, good morning. Just based on the comments that you would have made before in terms of having the vacancy and having the support of the Ministry of Finance in terms of filling those vacancies, you indicated you would come back in terms of the timeline in terms of filling those vacancies, but what is the typical, you said the process is an exam and then interviews, etc. What is the typical timeline for that process?
I would say approximately 2 years before the exam is set, double marked by a specialist and another person, and interviews being held and appointments being made. Maximum 2 years' time.
Okay, so within a 2-year period, you anticipate all these
Everything being
vacancies
equal.
should be filled. What I wanted to ask is, you seem to have a very positive and cohesive team that works with respect to the resources you have. In terms of the efficiency of the Auditor General's office, would you say over the period of years you would have increased in efficiency?
Yes, definitely I have. I will say that. Over the years, the Auditor General has kept in line with the cutting edge of all the auditing standards, the ESIs, the world standards. We are there with them. Presently, we are using the 2020 IDI, Enterprise Development Initiative from Norway. Their templates for the risk-based approach to auditing, which is the world standard, which has been a part of the work program of the Auditor General Department for the last, since 2020, we have shifted it. Before that, we had the Enterprise standards, which are world standards. And every file that reaches Madam AG must be in line with that standard. So before it even reaches her, the quality assurance procedures are in place before the first level review, second level review, to ensure that everything is done properly. So there's a clear planning, pre-planning, planning, execution, review, and reporting phase in all our work files. So because we've been in line with the cutting edge auditing standards, accounting standards, I must admit that even with the computerization of all our working papers, we mightn't be as, how should I put it, fully there as yet, but we have improved in the efficiency of our work. Because the auditing standards today requires a lot of work. The pre-planning stage, the planning stage is almost like 1/3 the time as opposed to being on the field to ensure that what we do on the field is properly done. And the reviews must be done at a certain level of integrity, the calculations of materiality and error, and risk analysis. The risk analysis is a major part of what we do now. Based on the last 5 years of auditing of any client, the management letters, the materiality calculations, the trends in expenditure, we look at the risk portfolio and risk profile of every one of our clients before we go out. So sometimes we might say, listen, at the end of it all, there's no risk in this client, maybe it is very low risk. Maybe we can focus on another area. So I'm looking at a maturing entity, institution, where institutional knowledge has been passed down, and we're keeping in line with the modern standards of auditing.
So again, just as the chairman would have done, I'd like to congratulate you on this achievement. I had one general question, which was based on, with the whole process of auditing, would you have or have you uncovered any material errors of fraud or illegal acts or deficiencies or weaknesses within control systems of any of the heads of expenditures that you would have audited, and how, within the audit of 2022, of course, and how were these issues addressed?
Okay, we are very careful on the use of fraud being a legal term as opposed to an auditing term. So we might say an irregularity was found. So if an irregularity is found, we take it to the higher authorities, the relevant authority, whether it's the police or the fraud squad. We don't pursue it as we're going to pursue fraud. Irregularity, we have maybe a direct line to the fraud squad, we hand the documents over and let them deal with it. Because if we go ahead with it, it will be out of line. We audit and we see what is found, what is right, what is wrong. And generally, we have found no major issues of fraud. The press would have picked up maybe 3 issues with incidents in the public domain, which we would not comment on. 2 of them are before the investigation committee and the courts right now. 1 was tried and found guilty. But whenever we find issues, we try to talk to the client immediately about it. At the last day of the audit, we talk to them in the exit meeting. We give them a management letter, and you have 3 opportunities to correct whatever is wrong. But to say major irregularities and fraud, we would not go into that, say no. I'll have to say no. Most documents were there, or some documents that we wanted to look at that were not there would have caused us to just say, listen, we can't give an opinion.
Next question, Chairman. Would you say that, based on your comment, that the institutions that are being audited most of them would have been in line with what their requirements would have been, and may have been proved in terms of their processes that is required for your auditing department.
Okay. I speak on behalf of the appropriation account, which is this report we're looking at. Most of the financial regulations, financial structures were being followed. Certain key documents in between were not provided, which we reported here. In the management letters, we'll have a more detailed account of other issues, but these are the main issues here. On the statutory boards and similar bodies, I am not privy to that section of the department that deals with it. I'm just going to comment on the appropriation accounts of the ministries and departments.
Thank you.
Mr. Assistant Auditor General, after the audit is completed and you would have written your report, your management letter, etc., what happens if you are seeing consistent, could be errors across the board over different agencies? Is it that you all go back and conduct some training or anything like that, or you just send the letter and leave it as like that?
Okay, training and internal audit accounting is the purview of the Comptroller of Accounts, not the Auditor General. We would be out of line. They would issue the circulars and whatever instructions, and we will say, yea or nay, they were followed or not followed. But I want to say, during the audit, we find an issue. We talk to the client immediately. We say, listen, we have a little problem here. Maybe you should not have done this. This is wrong. This is the wrong format, the wrong document. You're doing it wrongly. So we have a discussion immediately on the ground with the person. It's part of our training. At the end of the audit, we have an exit meeting in which all issues are discussed with the head of the accounting unit. And it's a discussion. It's not like police and thief or like what you do something wrong. It's a reason of nation building to correct issues. At the end of it all, after 3 weeks, we issue the management letter detailing all the unresolved issues, because some of the issues would have been resolved on the field. And we have to say, like, most ministries are very understanding when we listen. We found an error here, could you correct it, please? And they say, okay, we understand, and they correct it. After the management letters issue, we give them 3 weeks to respond. If within 3 weeks they respond and they say, okay, we have corrected certain issues, we go back and we check to make sure these issues were addressed. If they are not addressed and the material, to make it into the bigger report. The following year now, when we look to plan to do that audit, we do the risk analysis. What were the issues over the last 5 years? So any client we're going to, we more or less have an x-ray of what is going on in that ministry or that department or that agency. So we know how to plan what we plan. And even when we're going in, we talk to them again in advance. We plan a meeting. Listen, over the last few years, we found these issues. So we work with our clients as best we could within the parameters of the Exchequer and Audit Act. Okay. Because training will be out of line to do training.
I'm just saying, I mean, I understand you don't want an adversarial relationship or encounter, because that is probably counterproductive. But I'm still saying, perhaps it might be helpful, that maybe you are not doing the training yourself, but to insist on it, because as I said, it is probably not material, it's probably just an error, and you're seeing it consistently across various entities. Now, I also want to ask, there is a note in the account about the integrated financial management information systems in the Treasury, which is supposed to go across the network of ministries. But there has been the initial training, there's a phase implementation, etc., and there's a go-live date. Now, I'm sure that will make your life very easy in terms of audit, because everything will be standardized. And I have a question of that coming on the municipal bodies now after that. Where are we with that?
Okay, before we go to the IFMIS, as it is present with the manual system, there is a standardized approach with the financial regulation instructions. If they follow it, it's across the board, the vote books and mechanisms with the vote book. The IFMIS has not begun as yet. It's stalled. It has not been implemented across maybe one or two ministries, if that much.
But are you saying it has been helpful if it is implemented?
If it is implemented, but as that we sit here today, it's not implemented.
Okay, just one last question. I only have two, but one just. Which brings me to everything. Literally, everything now is about IT in terms of the accounts and things where you post, you store your documents and what have you. So there's a risk associated with that, which I'm sure you're aware of. And now we have all these cyber attacks, right? And maybe some ministries they have even been victims of these cyber attacks, although we probably would not have heard about it in the public domain. What are you doing as auditors with respect to looking at the systems, auditing the systems, in ensuring that we could mitigate against those kind of risks. Because
Did you look at it yourself? Right. So the IFMIS system is a function of the Treasury Department, not the Auditor General. And we have plans to look at it at the implementation level. So when the report said the first few ministries were on the system, we have plans to look at the IT audit of it, to ensure the integrity of it. But with it being at a quiet standstill, we cannot get into it. But we have plans, once it goes live, even to maybe 4 or 5 ministries, we can look into it. But as it is now, it is not in place.
Okay, so why is it at a standstill, please?
I'll have to refer that question to the Ministry of Finance.
I find you like a little bit passive because, if audit is your business, and you want to ensure that there's accountability, because that is what you are there to ensure, right? You're not just a tool in the shed. It's really to ensure that there is accountability and there's compliance with the standard accounting practices and so on, And this, IFMIS, will really help. Why are we, even at the level of the Auditor General, kind of pushing for that in terms of getting it across the network?
Madam Auditor General acting, even the Auditor General at their level can report on what it is. To push the project is a function of the Ministry of Finance and the Comptroller of Accounts. We would be almost out of line to insist they put it in place. It will be a good tool, we agree, but it is not our purview or right to say how far it should go, when it should go. We could report on it where it has reached or where it has not reached, but in terms of enforcement, it'll be with the Comptroller of Accounts.
One last, can you tell if a system has been hacked? Because if you're auditing, you're looking at the data, the quality of the data, that you have, the accuracy of the data, that the data has not been compromised, and all of the information that was stored on some level, whatever level of sophistication, in some kind of IT database. Can you tell, if something has not been corrupted?
Yes, we can. We have an IT section staffed by persons who are qualified in audit, IT auditing, who can check the systems. In fact, they've checked several systems within the public service before and commented on them. And they are qualified to determine if the system was hacked.
Thank you.
I have a question based on, I have a question based on your response with regards to the IFMIS. In your report for 2022, you indicated that it was to go live in the second quarter of 2023. I know that you would have followed it up, so I'm asking the same question a little bit differently. I know that you would have followed it up because you would have reported on the status of it in your 2022 report. What I would like to get from you today is the possibility of a status report as of today of that IFMIS. Not necessarily what the reasoning is, because we can ask the Ministry of Finance for feedback on that, but from your perspective, from your information, what is the current status of this integrated financial management information system?
Okay. I want to say before I answer that question, the Auditor General has been eagerly, on a parallel level, focusing on this IFMIS system to bring it to fruition, looking on but not being a part of it. As we are sitting here today, we understand that the system has not been implemented.
At all? There's been no progress?
Maybe two small ministries, if so much.
All right, so the requirement, not the requirement, but the advice in your document in the 2022 report was that a consultant was going to be hired to expedite the implementation. Are you aware of whether a consultant was in fact hired?
No, we are not aware of it. But if even he was hired, it has gone nowhere.
So would you say then that the absence of this IFMIS would further place the Auditor General's department in a bit of difficulty when added to the vacancies that you currently have?
No, I don't believe so, because we are already auditing a manual system, and we will work with it. If we have the IFMIS system would have come in place, it would have been easier for us to audit the accounts. We agree.
As Auditor General, given the importance that this IFMIS clearly has Can you advise what you would have done as the Auditor General's Department to attempt to push the envelope to get the Ministry of Finance or whichever other agencies are involved to expedite this IFMIS system?
Okay, we would first of all realize that what are our powers to give an opinion on. I understand the question you're given to us.
Yep.
For the national development to get a system going, maybe we could, in the management letters, just mention money was spent on the system and we would like to see the progress made, or maybe management letters along that line, discussions along that line. But we would not want to be the one to force the issue.
Although it will clearly improve your ability to do your job.
I fully agreed, but again, it's not us to force the issue of the system to put it in place. We would audit the issues, the circulars, regulations issued by the Treasury. They're the ones who issue these things and put these things in place. We can suggest, so maybe, or comment on, but that's as far as we could go.
Thank you. Member Rep. Roy? No, that's all right. You proceed.
But don't you think you could play a greater advocacy role? Because I've been on this committee for quite a number of years, and I've always heard the Auditor General Department talking about the importance of IFMIS. So I was shocked this morning when I heard it's just about, 2-3 ministries or departments or agencies implementing?
I do sympathize with your comment, but the fact is we, as the Auditor General, we have certain parameters in which we must operate, and we have to be very careful we don't cross those lines. With regards to nation building from an auditing perspective, we give an opinion on the accounts or the state of affairs, but in terms of advice and pushing the envelope, it's not really the better thing for an Auditor General or a Supreme Audit Institution internationally to be involved in.
So that's the international best practice, not to...
Not right. To be there, the best practice is you report what is happening, and maybe they can interpret it. But we are not the ones to force the point for the implementation of programs. We comment on it.
Okay. So every year you would make recommendations. I know for 3 consecutive reports you would have made recommendations about IT governance and controls. So if going back into an entity, you're recognizing the recommendations are being implemented, you can't force the issue, you just have to put it on paper, and it's just up to an agency, a ministry, a department to accept your recommendation or just leave it be. That's the situation.
The situation is the end of the day, the Public Accounts Committee has a right to call in these clients and use the management letters and the reports and bring the person to account. That's as far as we could go.
Okay.
And keep it in the reports what is going on or what is not going on.
Okay. What other question, Mr. Chairman? Sure. And it goes back to your staffing levels. You'd have indicated that some of the COVID protocols were still in place when you were doing the last audit, and taking into consideration the fact that you have that 35% shortfall in staffing, how would that have impacted your ability to carry out your work, and what strategies you would have used to overcome the challenges that you would have encountered? Okay.
First of all, we try to be very exact with our timetabling of audits, call in advance, a month, 2 months in advance, and being flexible. If there's a quarantine issue with a client, we go somewhere else. Or extract the data and soft copy, and maybe work from home or work in the office, and do what we can do otherwise. But we were very flexible in getting information from our clients to get a job done. With the integrity of the samplings, we were using the materiality calculations, everything was still in place to work around it.
The majority of your staff, are they public servants, or do you have a lot of contracted officers?
In the auditing stream, fully public servants, maybe 1 or 2 on contracts as a returning scholar.
Okay.
Otherwise, maybe from the IT section, maybe 1 or 2 persons on contract.
So while you're waiting for the persons to come on by the regular public service route, is there any possibility to help you with that 35% shortfall to bring on persons on contract to help to augment it? Okay,
once we allow the finances to do it, we do it as best as we could.
Once you have the finance to do it, you will do it?
We'll do it.
And you have, you said you have been receiving the support from your...
Ministry of Finance, yes, quite cooperative with us, and the DPA. Yeah,
So you would have developed a recruitment plan in terms of contracted persons that you want to bring on to assist in the meantime? You develop.
Right, we're trying to stay away from contract and bring full-time employees, because when you have a contract employee for 2 or 3 years, afterwards they leave.
So you prefer to wait until they come through the
They come through and they stay with us for at least 20 or 50, 25 years. So we have that person with institutional knowledge, right? Some of these people who sit with us here today, 25 years, they would have audited the public companies and the whole of Point Lisas. The institutional knowledge they have, it's a treasury of knowledge. And the different ministries and the different manifestations, different ministries, we have it here. So when we keep these people for a longer period, the public servants, we know when we move around, they can say, okay, I remember 15 years ago, this was the IT software, this is what happened here, this was the configuration of the staff. Whereas the contract person might stay for 2 or 3 years, and we get some good contract people, some are returning scholars. But when they leave, they leave
with the knowledge.
the knowledge.
But let me join my chairman and my other colleague in congratulating you on your work.
I appreciate it.
And all that you're doing.
Thank you, Chairman. I join in welcoming all members of the panel before us. And from the onset, let me join in congratulating you as well for the work that you're doing. There were several references in your responses to international best practice, and that certainly attracted my attention. My first question has to do with, well, the fact is you have counterparts elsewhere within the CARICOM region, within the hemisphere, and internationally. What is the degree of engagement, exchange, interface, participation in seminars, conferences, and other fora that might exist that would enable you to share your experiences and knowledge and also gain from the experiences and knowledge of your counterparts elsewhere? What is the nature of that interface?
Okay, the generic term for Auditor General, because we came from a colonial past, is really SAI, Supreme Audit Institution. That's a generic term across the world. So in the Caribbean, we have the CAROSI, Caribbean Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions. So we have about 23 members from Aruba straight up to Jamaica and Belize. And maybe every 3 years, there's the Congress held, and we exchange papers, ideas. And because of the technology now, we are partnering in certain audits in different areas. I don't want to get into details of it because of the nature of it. But we do, between islands in the Caribbean, we have exchange of ideas and auditing issues. There's the Eurosci, European countries, there are Arabo-Sci, the Arabian countries, the Afro-Sci countries, the PAS-Sci and the Pacific countries, groups and blocks. But the international body is the INTOSCI body, International Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions from 1954 in Havana, Cuba. And we are part of it. And there's one part of it, one arm of it called the IDI, the INTOSCI Development Initiative, that deals with training. So if you go to that website, we can get training on any topic in auditing, risk analysis, statistical sampling. And one key document they produced, in fact, the CAROSI Caribbean region 2010 produced a book on the risk-based approach to auditing, using the standards 315, 320, 325 to produce this book, and it was a world standard. It was used across the INTOSCI. In 2020, that book was revised by the Norwegian Supreme Audit Institution and was republished with the updated standards, which is what we use today. And every maybe 4 or 5 years, the ESI's international standards are adjusted, and that book is adjusted. And we have templates we use in those books. So once you follow the templates, which are pre-planning, planning, execution, review, reporting around the world, the international standards are enforced in Trinidad and Tobago with the Auditor General's Department. Any file that is given a peer review will find these phases. And because of this, the International Congress, I believe, is every 3 years, and they meet virtually and discuss different issues, whether it's taxation, money laundering, green auditing, environmental auditing of the INTOSCI body. And that is a part of the international family of auditors that we are.
Okay. Thank you very much for your response. Mr. Chair, I have another question, and it goes back to what really has been the meat of the discourse thus far, the concern about your staffing levels that has echoed through much of this exchange. And I took note of your response to my colleague, Minister Webster Roy. And while philosophically I could empathize with a view that it is certainly better to have individuals on the establishment and those with institutional history and memory. There are clear advantages. Might I maybe seek a little further clarification? Because I thought I heard that you only have 2 or 3 contract positions. What we found as a more pragmatic approach across many ministries and departments is to try to strike a balance between your mainstay long-term employees and short-term engagement, particularly when you're dealing with maybe the level at the base of the organization where you can rely for essential capacities on short-term engagement to really fill that space and that gap that might exist. So I don't know if it is just a need for some additional clarity in terms of the disposition of the department with respect to, especially with dealing with these long lead times to fill positions. And you know you're not the only one facing that. The judicious deployment of short-term contract engagement to bring some of those capacities, essential capacities, to bear. I just want some further comments from you.
Okay, could I say historically, maybe up to 5 years ago, we would have had like 12 persons on contract with us, 12 auditors, returning scholars. So once we have the finances and we have the bodies to come in, we take them.
Okay.
We are quite open to them, and we have gotten some really good auditors on the contract positions. Some of them came back, in fact, they were interviewed and came back full-time as audit seniors as they were professionally qualified. Today, an advertisement came out for public audit specialists at the Auditor General's Department. It's as of today, which will be contract positions to fill temporarily. So we are pursuing it. I didn't mean to go to say that we were totally against it, but the preference was say, but we still hire on contract. Once we have the finances, we put it out, and the vacancy came out even today for public audit specialists for our department.
Right. A little bit of further clarification, because when you're providing details, there seem to be details of positions at a higher level, audit specialists, etc., you're returning scholars. But I got the impression earlier that there's a significant deficit at more the administrative level within the department. Maybe I would have heard wrong. And it is at that level as well I'm asking, have you utilized this mechanism of short-term contract engagement, beside the returning scholars and those that important level at this sort of base?
Okay. At the lower levels, the audit examiner assistant 1 is not really administration. Administration is administration, the clerical level. At the lower levels, we hire through the Service Commissions Department. Now, we use the word public audit specialist because to create a contract post, we cannot use a public service post name. So we use the word public audit specialist for the same having a name, different from a public service post. But these people come in at the levels of maybe audit examiner 2, which is like middle auditor level, below specialist level, below the professional level, which is the senior level. So it's just a name specialist, but it's just a name created to create a post to bring in these people, but they are still at the foot soldier level.
Right, and my final question for this round has to do with your comment that you have not really encountered widespread irregularities. You, for obvious reasons, avoided the word fraud. In this 2022 round, some might find that surprising, given the backdrop of strong perceptions of corruption within public systems. And so I just want maybe a further comment from you on that. Is it that the limitations and mechanisms that you are able to deploy simply are not necessarily attuned to detecting a certain level of irregularity? Is this simply based on limitations of staff, etc., or how else can you maybe help account for a very low level of detection of major irregularities based on what you've shared against this perception and in some cases reality that there's significant corruption within our society and engaged in public bodies as well? Just a comment without getting you into any problems.
Okay. The word corruption and fraud and these words, we use the word irregularity. I believe this report does contain a very well captured areas of irregularities, some of them fairly substantial. I'm saying that across the board, if most ministries, it's not that prevalent, there are issues. And sometimes we cannot pursue this issue because certain documents are not provided. So we can't comment and so we say documents not provided, contracts not seen, whatever is going on. That is as far as we can go in terms of like a disclaimer of opinion. We cannot say because these documents are not provided. But to make it sound that it's a clean slate, I don't think I brought that impression across. It might not be widespread as we picked it up as hardcore with corruption use, but irregularities. But we did have a lot of these recorded in this report here, and if we look at the management letters, we'll have more issues in those management letters. This is the condensed version. The management letters to the ministries and departments will show you other issues that are going on, but the production of documents holds us back a lot. And the best we could put is documents not seen.
Thanks.
If I may pick up on my colleague's question, and your response as well, there is a substantial amount of irregularities cited in your report, a substantial amount of situations in which documents have not been seen or have not been presented for audit, and even more situations which are questionable in sense of the information not necessarily matching up to what you would have liked to see. So there is in fact in this document and in previous Auditor General's report specific identification of some areas of irregularities or concerns. My question then is, would the procurement legislation that has been ruled out now, would that assist in treating with some of the concerns and those irregularities which you would have identified in previous years? Would the procurement legislation, in your view, assist in treating with some of those issues?
I would have to say yes from reading the laws, but I'm not a lawyer. But for just a layman's accountant review of it, I believe so. Some of these things will be addressed, but we have to, again, let it play out. And let's look what comes out of it.
If I may as well, can you advise to what do you think is required? Because there has been consistency in what these irregularities are. Failure to supply information, books not being provided for audit, and so on. Those are fairly standard irregularities that we see on an annual basis, and on some instances in the same ministries and the same bodies. What do you think is, how do you think we should treat with that in terms of getting greater buy-in from these ministries and state departments?
Maybe possibly a relationship with these ministries, from the Public Accounts Committee with these ministries, and let them discuss what their shortcomings or weaknesses and deal with it from that level. We can report, and we have to stop there and give an opinion. That's where our line is drawn. We have to warn and be careful of not going further than that. But the PAC is where the buck stops more or less. Well, literally buck.
Can you advise whether or not these sorts of irregularities are across the board? Will we find them in other jurisdictions?
Jurisdictions meaning outside of
Trinidad and Tobago, in terms of the other supreme audit institutions elsewhere?
I'll have to get back to you on that to see what they produce in their books.
Do you have any questions?
Yes, I just wanted to follow up again on this, the municipal corporations, and it really impacts on this other system we're talking about, and the IFP. To start with, okay. Yes, thank you, Chairman. I have one other question about the internal controls within the context of the municipal corporations, because we have 14 of them, and when one look at the notes, you know, here and there you'll see differentiation in weaknesses or perhaps even strengths. And really, a system such as that, because what I'm seeing is that it will standardize the work. Now, you spoke about a standard that is currently in use, but maybe it is older, it is paper-based, etc. When with the IT system, the retrieval of documents is it makes it so much easier. You know, I don't know if in terms of spotting irregularities, if that too is easier. So one wants to know in terms of the standardization within the corporation of the recording, reporting, documentation, management, etc. What has been done? Because I don't know if in the 14th, every one of them, they are doing their business differently, because you have a change in the personnel at intervals, whether it's 3 years, now 4 years. What is done in terms of the training? Now, I know you'll tell me that is not your business, but it cannot not be a business, given that you are there at the outcome level. You know, after they have done all that they can with taxpayers' money, you are there looking at the outcomes. So I don't think that is satisfactory, that you're kind of static and I'm just there to oversee what they have recorded, you know. And basically it is a little bit passive in that. And I say I agree with the non-adversarial approach, because you want people to learn if there are mistakes, and if they are doing something well, at least you want them to improve on it. But certainly you want it to be system-wide. You know, and when you go into any municipal corporation or any ministry, you must recognize the systems because they are the same. It's not a little hybrid here and there, and because, you know, yes, you know, where a debit is posted and a credit is posted, but overall the policies are different. I don't think that is good enough for us in 2023. We can do better, so I am coming back. I know it's a long-winded approach, but the municipal corporation, where you have all these change in staff, and a lot of people don't really know accounts, financial reporting, they don't know the law, they don't know the policies. What is being done? Is it that you just wait to go in and audit and then, well, whatever?
Okay, thank you for the question. So, through the Chairman, the Exchequer and Audit Act, the financial regulations made under Section 45 of the Exchequer and Audit Act, the financial instructions made on Section 40 of the Exchequer and Audit Act are systems that exist. Whether we change or not, we have to be in a position to know this is our mandate, these are our parameters. And what I said before, I didn't want to use the word training, but once we find an issue, we sit down with the client and we explain to them why this is wrong. This is the regulation, this is the correct thing. So in essence, I was indirectly saying we do partially train them on the field. We tell them what the errors are. I just didn't want to say we train carte blanche, because we are not the trainer of. Right? So we work with our clients. We don't just take and say wrong. No, we sit down with our clients. We work with them. Because we have been taught over maybe 4 Auditors General over the years, from Ms. Thompson to Mrs. Hartley to Mr. Ali to Ms. Pujadas. We work with our clients to bring them to a point where they're at a good level, appropriate level. So we work with them. So initially we tell them what the issues are, and we work with them on the field, which can be considered correct. You know, I don't use the word training, but it is. At the last day of the audit, we sit down with the person in charge and we explain all the issues, the integrities, the implications of what happened, as far as we could, and in a sense, it is almost like telling them, training. This is the right way, this is the wrong way. When we give them the management letter, any management letter, we give them the weakness, the implication, and the recommendation how to correct the issue. It's almost like a textbook you get into correct issues. And we quote the relevant regulations and instructions. So we actually given them how to correct the system in writing. So I believe during the audit, at the end of the audit, with the management, we're doing enough to support the client in training. And we use the word client because we work with them. So like when we go over the following year and we say, these were the issues last year, did you correct them? Did you have any issues with them? And we work with them a lot in giving them advice.
Fair enough. But, okay, you look at them, okay, the following year, you look again to see if there's improvement. So if you have no improvement, let's say you have a qualified account, which generally people get because of all of the issues. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of transactions, etc. And people might not file something in the right place, and we are very specific in the public service, I know this. I'm just saying, if it is really seriously qualified, and you are seeing no improvement, what then is the next step? Even if you can't take them, pass it on to the fraud squad, because there you can't really justify fraud because you don't have the documentation to see where things went. What do you then do?
The best we could do, as we are allowed within the law, is to put it in the management letter and bring it to the attention of the Public Accounts Committee during these reports. That is as far as we can go legally.
Thank you very much for the responses thus far. Beside the management letters and the meetings that you would have with your clients after audits are completed, have you found it useful to, in treating with some of the cross-cutting issues, to bring together accounting officers, PSs, etc., for some more general interface, review of common observations, and to just assist with that, their overall trajectory? Tell us a little bit about that, and if that is done with some periodicity or regularity. Do you deem that a useful interface as well, beside the individual contact?
Okay, it's a good idea, but again, with the reconstruction of the law in terms of training, the responsible persons, the controller of accounts, the Minister of Finance will get a copy of all our management letters. So they would have an idea what is going on with the accounting officers. With this report as well, going through the Minister of Finance, he would have an idea as well what are the weaknesses. But in terms of us, we do not have that authority to bring in the accounting officers and explain to them or train them along that line.
I hear you loud and clear, and I certainly wouldn't be the one to be encouraging you to go beyond your authority or your lawful remit. But I think there seems to be a challenge with the application of the word training. And I don't see such an interface, particularly if it is connected to your core role and duty, and serving the greater public good, as you've referenced several times. I don't see that necessarily to be interpreted as training sessions, but yeah, sensitization, it may assist with your own workload, assist with the committee's workload, etc. Because there are some patterns, some repeat observations, long-standing challenges with the clients. And just as a general principle, it can be useful to bring the cohort together. Maybe you yourself may not be the convener. It could be a different level within the Ministry of Finance, but to create a forum for your interface with the broader group of public officers and particularly permanent secretaries. So, but I preface all of that with respect for your role, lines of authority and responsibility. I just feel, given the dialogue that we've had thus far, that some of that exchange could be useful in the long run.
Okay, I'll take it back to Madam AG, and we could have a discussion with her opinion and advice on it.
Thank you very much. I also support that position, having that forum to have that form of discussion. In my previous round of questioning, you would have responded on the INTOSI Development Initiative Audit Handbook that you all are using, and it brings a increased efficiency based on what you were saying. In your report, you would have spoken about some adaptations to Trinidad and Tobago that were made. What were some of the adaptations, and why were these adaptations made?
Okay. 2 extra lines of review were not recorded in that booklet because of the practice worldwide. At the Auditor General's Department, we have the first level review and the second level review that must be done. No file goes in the AG's office without these two reports being done, and they were not recorded in the book. So we created those two extra documents, the first level review template and the second level review template, and we put them into the book and we follow them as a standard across the department. That was the only two major adaptations we put in, and maybe one would have been an analysis sheet and getting the opinion. So when we look at maybe not these accounts, maybe the statutory boards, when you have the balance sheet, the profit and loss, the equity statements, we can analyze those in a scientific way to get the opinion. Those were the only three adaptations we put into the book. Everything else is in line with the international standards.
And would you say that the institutions that you audit should or should have sight of this new handbook, this new handbook, in terms of they being able to present what is required for their own internal audit systems? So, for example, the statutory boards, etc.
The book itself is more for the external auditor to give an opinion on the financial statements. Statement of financial position, statement of equity, statement of receipts and disbursements. The internal auditor will be more focused on maybe internal issues, and this booklet might not be good to use for that because it's more the external granting an opinion on a financial statement.
Okay, thank you. Chairman.
I have one note I want to bring to the attention of the Auditor General's Department. Just by way of clarification, page, I think it is 54, you have a typographical. And the typographical is in terms of the number, the total amount of arrears reported. In your table, you have 48,922,900. It's a substantial number, but at the end of it, there's a number missing. At the, trying to find it. Right, on page 54, at the bottom of page 54, item 422. The Ministry of Finance showed arrears of revenue totaling 48 million, because this figure actually is where the typo is. $48,922,900.46, when it should be 48 billion. Yep. So the number one is missing at the end of the very large number. So that tells you that we actually went through this with a serious fine-tooth comb, because we also view this this exercise as extremely important in ensuring that the public purse is protected as much as possible. My colleague, Member John, has a question.
Yes, Chairman. Matters, limitation of the scope, independence, and the limitation of the audit of statement of revenue. You probably know what I'm talking about. Where since you quote under Section 4 of the Income Tax Act, Chapter 7501, is the provision that sets out the official secrecy requirements relating to the income or items of the income of any person. And that means something that has been ongoing. And reference is made to 2017 before this same committee, and basically one would have met on several occasions during the course of the financial years 2017, 18, and now we're in 23, going into 24. And the final note on this issue is that on April 11, 23, the Attorney General confirmed his office would make an application to the Supreme Court. This is a long time. And he said this is, it has to do to mitigate the risks associated with the assertion of completeness of revenue, alternative testing to determine the reasonableness. So there's a risk here. All right, so is there any update?
Mr. Chair, we have no response as yet from the Attorney General's office on this matter. We have tried our best to work around the verification of revenue figure. So like we might do surveys at the revenue offices to trace it back into the Treasury. But this is a matter because, yes, we do the spending, the appropriation account, but the revenue base revenue streams is very important to the audit as well. It's part of one of the major accounts, and there's been no resolution so far.
And it must go through the Attorney General's office.
Yes.
You're going to take it to the court for the interpretation. Okay. Fair enough.
Mike? If there are no further questions, it falls to me to thank the representatives of the Auditor General's Department for your presence here today and the clarification you would have provided to some of the questions being raised by my colleagues present. Again, I want to use the opportunity to congratulate the department on the excellent job that you've been doing. I want to highlight, by way of summary, I think the concern of the Public Accounts Committee that the Auditor General's Department probably needs to become a little bit more aggressive in pursuing, especially the IFMIS program, that's Integrated Financial Management Information System, especially pursuing that. I'm appreciative of the fact, I think we all are appreciative of the fact that you are constrained by the law. But given the importance, especially of that IFMIS, and with some of the other issues, like the court matters we just discussed, some of those things will impact directly on the ability of the Auditor General's Department to effectively and efficiently do its job. What you just described is having to go around a problem, which means that you would have been expending additional resources to pursue a matter because something else was just not in place. So I think that we accept that your focus and your function is based on the need to provide management letters and guidance via the management letters and so on. But I think that there's a desire on behalf of the committee for you to I want to make the recommendation for the way forward. There's a desire on the part of the committee to see a little bit more aggression from the Auditor General's Department in pursuing these matters, which would, in essence, treat with some of the very same irregularities that you would have identified over the years. One way may be to establish a stronger, more aggressive relationship with Corporation Sole, the Ministry of Finance. You already indicated that you have a very good relationship with the Ministry of Finance, and one way may be to embrace the Ministry of Finance a little bit more aggressively to have some of those matters resolved so that on your next occasion that you come before the committee or when you do your report, you would be able to indicate some of the solutions that would have come out of your bilateral discussions with the Ministry of Finance. Yep. Again, I want to thank you. Thank you very much for your openness, frankness, and desire to engage the committee. And to thank you for your participation here today. I also want to use the opportunity to thank the listening and viewing audience for tuning in and to wish all a very happy Diwali and a safe rest of the year until we see you all again. Thank you very much. We will now suspend the sitting as we have representatives from the Auditor General's Department who will be excused from now. Thank you.